What's up, investors and people of Reddit, it's the Russian Dude, and this is your daily update on Russian-Ukrainian war as of Thursday, April 7th. And this time I have as always two major stories to talk about with you today. First is the very first official acknowledgement by some Russian government representatives that Russia is indeed struggling in this war with Ukraine. The person who said this is very close to Putin, so make sure to stay for that part of the video. And second is the suspension of Russia from Human Rights Council. But Russia decided that they must have the final word here, so don't miss that part either. I will also briefly present some other events and news that happened today. Today, for the very first time since the beginning of so-called military operation in Ukraine, the press secretary of Russia, almost the right hand of Putin, said that Russia acknowledges that they lost lots of people. Just to give you a perspective, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine says that Russia has lost approximately 18,500 soldiers in Ukraine, while Russian side acknowledges that the losses are only limited to 1,500. Dmitry Peskov is a very close person to Putin, and nothing goes to or from Putin without passing him first. So basically, whenever this high government official of Russia acknowledges the big losses of Russian army in Ukraine, we can only estimate the real sentiment of the Russian government in general. But besides this point, Dmitry Peskov goes on and says that Russia has many witnesses that all the civilians that were killed in Bucha and Mariupol were actually killed by Nazis in Ukraine and not Russia. He also says that the main goal of Russia in this so-called military operation was to prevent the World War III. And even though Russia is indeed struggling against Western sanctions, Russia started preparing against these sanctions 1 year ago, which as a Russian I can kinda confirm because I saw that some international food in our grocery stores was replaced by Russian producers. And finally, Dmitry Peskov mentioned that he hopes that this military operation will be over in the nearest future, and he hopes that this will happen because of productive talks and not because of the use of weapons. On this map we can see the current state of so-called military operation in Ukraine. As we can see, the north of Ukraine is no longer occupied by Russian forces, but there is still a heavy presence of Russians in eastern part of Ukraine. According to the Ministry of Defense of Russia, the first stage of this so-called military operation was achieved completely, whatever it means. And now, the second part of this operation would be to focus their attention on the eastern part of Ukraine, which is what we see on this map. And if you want to have more details, feel free to pause the video. And by the way, if you like this style of daily news reporting, feel free to like this video and subscribe to my channel. On this map you can see a part of the city of Mariupol, which is one of the hottest military zones in Ukraine. And the territory which is highlighted in blue is the territory which is still under control of Ukraine, specifically Azov Battalion, which according to Russia is the biggest Nazi in Ukraine. And as you can see right here, the battalion Azov is practically surrounded by Russian forces. Just as a reminder, one of the requirements from Russian side to win this war is to destroy all alleged Nazis in Ukraine. In this picture we can see a Russian soldier who was captured by Ukrainians. And what's funny and very sad at the same time is that Russia is fighting against Nazis in Ukraine while having Nazis in their own army. Ukraine reported that Russian mines were spotted in civilian apartments in liberated Ukrainian cities. And specifically in this video we can see a mine which is inside the washing machine. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, says that Ukraine is a Western puppet. He also added that some Western countries, mainly the United States of America, constantly push Ukraine to continue war in its territory. And by the way, just a quick note, as a person who has very close relatives both in Russia and in Ukraine, I can definitely tell that Ukrainian men joined the army to fight against Russia on their own free will. Today, the United Nations has suspended Russia from being a part of Human Rights Council as a result of their actions in Bucha, Ukraine. 93 countries voted in favor of the suspension, 24 voted against it, and 58 countries did not vote at all. And in this very picture you can see how exactly different countries voted in this matter. So if you want to see how your country voted, feel free to pause the video. And for those of you who are just listening to this news update, some of the countries which voted against the suspension were Algeria, China, Gabon, Kyrgyzstan, Nicaragua, Tajikistan, Vietnam and Zimbabwe. But Russia decided to have the final word in this situation, and they said that we are leaving the Council of Human Rights, which basically translates as no, you're not gonna kick us out, we're gonna leave it ourselves. And by the way, Human Rights Council country participants are not allowed to use any form of torture or slavery, which according to my assumptions will no longer stop Russia from even torturing people who are speaking against the government. Last week, one Russian woman even tried to buy Chanel bag in Dubai. But whenever shop assistants heard her speaking Russian, they asked her whether she's gonna wear this bag on the territory of Russia. She said that no, she's buying this just to use it basically here, but nevertheless, the shop assistants made her sign a document which said that she will not use this bag on the territory of Russia. This whole incident created literally a revolution of Russian women against Chanel brand. Some Russian government representatives were even saying that Chanel was making clothes for Nazi Germany. And today the following stickers, which basically merge Chanel brand and Hitler face, started appearing on Chanel stores in Moscow. I mean, some people call Chanel Nazis because they won't sell their bags to Russians, but whenever Russian army is doing on the territory of Ukraine is just a special military operation. Yesterday, for the very first time, the president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, proposed the list of country guarantors. And for those of you who do not know what this means, here's a quick recap. A couple of weeks ago, a very important talks between Russia and Ukraine happened in Turkey. And one of the points that was agreed upon by both countries is that Ukraine becomes a neutral country, which basically means that Ukraine will not allow international military camps to be based on its territory, neither it will have nuclear weapons. But in return, Ukraine was asking for some country guarantors, which means that in case there is a military intervention in the territory of Ukraine, these countries will have to help Ukraine. And so yesterday, the president finally announced the list of such countries, which includes United States of America, UK, Turkey, Poland, Germany, France and Israel. The next step for these countries would be to meet in person and discuss what specifically security means. And only after this, after all the other agreements are clarified, the Ukraine will be ready to meet once again with Russia. In this video you can see Ukrainian battalion Azov destroying Russian tanks. In this picture you can see the consequences of Javelin missile strike against tank. Russian government forced YouTube to delete a song by Soviet singer which is called Do Russians Want a War? And I mean, okay, yes, Russia does not allow any anti-war propaganda, but this song was recorded in 1961. So basically you get the idea how difficult sometimes it can get to speak against the situation in Ukraine while being in Russia. In this chart you can see the most popular apps which were downloaded in App Store on the territory of Russia in comparison between February and March. And as you can see, 7 out of 10 most downloaded apps in Russia were VPN services. And for those of you who do not know what a VPN is, it basically allows you to bypass internet restrictions. This video shows the condition of the city of Irpin, Ukraine. According to the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, these are approximate losses of the Russian army as of April 7th. Russia has lost approximately 18,900 soldiers, 698 tanks and 150 planes. And if you want to see more details, feel free to pause the video. Some Russian soldiers who do not want to fight against Ukraine started deserting Russian army and forming their own group called Liberty to Russia. They're basically exchanging their uniforms and are fighting on Ukrainian side. The representative of Ireland in Euro Parliament, Claire Daly, was heavily criticizing sanctions against Russia. She basically said that all these sanctions, especially imposed by America on Russia, have negative impact on the whole entire continent. She said that it is so easy to disrupt the economy while being on another side of the world. But at the same time, we, European countries, will have to continue living with Russia as our neighbor. She also said that she can no longer tolerate weapons being sent to Ukraine because it only extends the war. The President Zelensky mentioned that post-war Ukraine will be more like Israel and not that liberal as Europe. For the very first time since the Second World War, the USA is ready to give weapons to Ukraine according to Lend-Lease program. And in very basic understanding, this program implies sending weapons with less bureaucratic restrictions, which basically makes it faster. The Lend-Lease program was already approved by the House of Representatives and now is awaiting the signature from the President Joe Biden. As of today, the satellite internet called Starlink, which is owned by Elon Musk, is one of the main sources of internet and military communication in Ukraine. The European Union was planning to completely ban Russian coal approximately in the middle of July, and as of today, this ban was pushed back to approximately mid-August. Russia has now prohibited all Google ads, which also includes advertisements that you see in YouTube. In addition to that, all the Russian advertisement which leads to Google services, such as once again Google or YouTube, is also prohibited. A couple of weeks ago, ago, Spotify announced that it's gonna leave Russian market April 1st. As of today, I still see some of my Russian friends using Spotify, but this time Spotify announced that yes, definitely we're gonna be leaving Russian market April 11th. The Russian currency ruble continues its strengthening against US dollar. Just a quick reminder, at the very peak, the exchange rate between Russian ruble and US dollar was approximately 140 rubles for $1. At this very moment, $1 US costs 75 rubles, which brings the exchange rate to even before the war times. The following quill, which belongs to the biggest propagandist of Russia, Vladimir Solovyov, and by the way, it is not located in Russia, was sprayed with red paint. Previously, Hungary announced that it is ready to pay for Russian gas with Russian rubles, and this decision is now acknowledged as an unfriendly act by Ukrainians. The Vice President of the European Commission, Josep Borrell, mentioned that the European Union has paid 35 times more to Russia for its energy sources in comparison to whatever it gave to Ukraine since the beginning of this military conflict. The President of the United States, Joe Biden, once again mentioned that America is not planning to send its soldiers to Ukraine. Crimea started mobilizing its men to the needs of Russian army. Some people in Greece are protesting against NATO sending weapons to Ukraine. The United Kingdom started sending armored vehicles to Ukraine. And Denmark also mentioned that they are planning to send even more weapons to Ukraine in the nearest future. Australia is also planning to send armored vehicles to Ukraine called Bushmaster. Some Russian people report that they cannot transfer money using Western Union whenever they present their Russian passports. In Crimea, there was a concert today supporting the military operation of Russia in Ukraine. The very first batch of Russian oil and coal that was paid in Chinese yuan is now heading towards China. This is one of the first major events of not using US dollar as an international currency in international trade. Thank you so much, stay safe, and see you tomorrow.